Hi guys, and welcome to Tech Talks with Rachel. Today I'm here with Ashe. She works in risk and compliance, and we're going to explore a different type of tech role, which I'm actually quite new to. So I'm quite excited to explore and learn with you guys. Ashe, welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So who is Ashe outside of tech, first of all?
Good question. I find this question so funny because I don't think my hobbies are real hobbies. My hobbies are relaxing, enjoying. I like to eat. I like music. Yeah, so it's so cliche, but yeah, I like a good time. Yeah.
I love that. So what is, if you like to eat, what's your favorite dish?
Gosh, maybe because I'm going for dinner tonight, Turkish.
Ooh.
Yeah, Turkish.
What's your favorite Turkish kind of meal?
Grilled lamb.
Grilled lamb.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with lamb.
Literally. What, do you know what? You can, but that's a story for another day. I've had some bad experiences, but yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, you're actually from Manchester.
I am indeed.
And you grew up here.
Yes.
And this is actually a big tech hub. But did you grow up knowing you were going to go into tech? Or was it kind of something you stumbled into?
Not at all. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a spy. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. And I don't think I decided on a career path until literally final year of university. Yeah, before I was just going on vibes. Studied criminology with social psychology, so not tech related at all. And then, yeah, final year, I was just doing like research into, potential career options. I did at first think I was going to go down the criminology path, maybe, I don't know, psychology. I signed up for a grad scheme to be a prison officer. And I went for an assessment test center. And one of the exercises was there's like an actor that acts as a prisoner and you just have to pretend to be the prison guard. And the actor came in and he started throwing chairs and swearing. And I was just like, okay, I think I have to reevaluate my whole career path. I said, yeah, this is not for me. I'm not set up for that. So yeah, I did a module though in criminology on the globalization of crime. And then they talked a bit about cybercrime there. So I think that's like my first introduction into tech or cyber-ish. So I thought, this is more interesting. So I did a little bit more research and yeah, I saw that tech pays well. So I said, okay, sold. That's all it takes.
Yeah,
that's how I kind of decided to get into tech.
Okay, so what is actually your role? Because I gave a bit of an umbrella introduction to your role because you've had slightly different roles. So what's your role right now?
My current role right now is a controls testing and assurance manager. That's my title.
Sounds very serious.
Yeah, it can be.
What is your day-to-day with that?
Essentially, so I work in financial services. So I'm part of a centralized controls testing team. And what that means is we go into different departments and we make sure that things are operating as they should, which is very, very vague. I know. To give a specific example, so there's a lot behind the scenes that happens within ads and payments, for example. So when you receive a payment from somebody, there's a whole load of tech and code and things that happen beforehand. So my role is to go in every year or every 2 years, depending on what the area is, and just speak to the engineers. I'll get them to walk me through the code for a particular process. Walk me through the process, walk me through how they deal with incidents if it comes up, and just make sure that what they say they're doing is what they're actually doing. So that's what we call controls testing, just validating that the processes are working as they should.
So what does your day-to-day look like then when you sign into work?
I'll sign in, I'll do an hour in the morning of chasing. There's a lot of chasing involved with my job, chasing different people, chasing for evidence. I might have a walkthrough scheduled. So that's essentially like a 30-minute meeting with the control owner. So it might be an engineer who will chat me through, the process and what they do. And then the actual testing itself, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. So the testing is basically reviewing evidence that they've provided me to make sure it's good. So it could be reviewing code, it could be reviewing alerts, it could be reviewing spreadsheets full of data. So a lot of reviewing. That once I review, I write up my summary in a small report, and then that's the control test done. I'll feed that back to the control owner, and that's a control test kind of wrapped up very, very briefly.
Okay, so to kind of understand, because this channel we try to understand the ecosystem of tech and how people can kind of slot into the right role for them. How does your role qualify as a tech role? What makes it a tech role?
I think, so that's a good question, actually. I think this role has probably been the most broadest ranging role that I've done so far. So it's not necessarily specific to tech. But beforehand, I was in internal audit that was another lengthy title, as an infrastructure and technology audit manager. So that one was a more technical role because we would look at the lower layers of the tech stack, the infrastructure of the tech stack, and we would assess them and we'd audit them. So I'd say that's what makes it more tech related. But in this role, I think there's tech elements in terms of code review, and a lot of the process do rely on tech. A lot of the processes, do rely on tech. So even like if I'm looking into people and HR exercises and activities that they do, a question that I'm going to ask them is what kind of like automated systems you have in place to do what you're supposed to do. And I'll review the automated process, which links back to technology.
Okay. Yeah. So how technical are you? You mentioned code reviews.
Yeah. I'm not technical, like I said. I studied criminology and social psychology. I did do quite a bit of upskilling though, in terms of getting to grips with the basics of technology. And that was just through personal learning on YouTube and just courses. I did a couple of foundational courses in cloud because I thought I would want to branch there. I still might. And then I started a master's in cybersecurity as well. So I think it's a lot of theory. So theoretically, I do understand technology, but in terms of coding itself, I'm not involved in any part of that. But I see coding and the more technical side of things is just another language. So if you were to ask me, can you speak Spanish? I'd be like, no. But if you give me like 2 months and I take some basic Duolingo classes, I'll be able to speak a few words here and there. So that's how I kind of see myself in terms of tech. I'm not a fluent tech speaker per se, but I'm intermediary. I've done a few lessons, so I can pick up some things here and there.
So what are the kind of attributes then that you would need to succeed in your role?
Yeah. I think the first one is you need to be inquisitive. You need to be the kind of person that doesn't take things at face value. So essentially in my role, I'm almost like a detective. So I'll see a process that's presented to me and the engineers or the control owner will tell me this is how it works, but I have to be inquisitive and ask the right questions to actually get them to prove to me that what they're saying is actually what's happening. So yeah, inquisitive. I think you also need to be diplomatic as well, because you can be speaking to some very, very senior people. I've spoken to CISOs of companies or senior engineers who've been there for 20, 30 years. It's super, super technical. So you need to be able to propose what you're saying to them in a diplomatic manner, not intimidating, not overly confident, but in the same breath, that you know what you're talking about. And with my kind of role, it's almost like I'm coming in to look for problems. So that's never going to be an easy task to do. So you need to have a way to approach it in a diplomatic way that's not too annoying. Basically, don't annoy your clients or your stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's actually a really good thing to have, like, so I'm going to give a bit of context as to where you're coming from as well, because I've known Ashe since we were teenagers, and we met at a time where we didn't really know what our career would probably look like, and us predicting what our career would have been very wrong.
Yeah, listening
would have been very wrong. So I think, what would you say then that the traits for figuring out, and I guess in terms of eliminating, because you've talked about your journey of going to uni, studying sociology, you said? Criminology. And from criminology, how did you then start eliminating? What was the process of elimination? What was the most things that were important to you, and the things that you factored as pretty high in your decision making?
What I'm going to say might be a little bit controversial, but for me, I was following the money.
I'm the same.
I was following the money, and I feel like that's so taboo to say, but it just depends on where you're coming from. I'm first generation immigrant, working class parents, free school meals, like all the cliches. So I always almost envied people who used to pursue things out of passion, because that never even crossed my mind. For me, it's how do I get rich? That was the mindset that I had even at university at that young age of 20, 21 when I was making my decision. So it was definitely that, what would be the most lucrative career path for me to follow. Once I did get into that, the money's not everything, but it's up there. It's up there. I think secondary for me would be work-life balance. But saying that, I'm not saying work-life balance in the sense of you're not going to do any work and just go to the place that, will let you slack off. It's not that. It's just more, can I have a life outside of work? And is that encouraged? Yes or no? That was a big important factor for me as well. But saying that, I wasn't afraid to work. I knew that for the first 2 years, my goal was to work and work hard. And I feel like I've been on an upward trajectory for the last 5 or 6 years. Maybe it's only now that I'm thinking of coasting a little bit and just enjoying my role as it is. But I've always, every year, promotion, what am I going to do next? What's the next step kind of thing.
What was the process of, okay, I've picked my undergrad, and then now that I've done my undergrad, you said you wanted to follow the money because maybe when you're graduating, you're seeing, well, this role is probably not going to give me that much money.
Yeah.
So now you're thinking, okay, what is now the process? You've gone to do the prison guard.
Yeah, the prison guard role. Yeah.
The prison guard audition, and you're like, hell no.
Not for me.
Not for me. How much are they paying?
Do you know what? The money was good. It was on par with the other tech grad schemes that I was looking at. So I think back then it was like 32K, which is pretty decent for a starter. So it was good, and they were offering like a degree apprenticeship as well as part of it. It was a good scheme.
Okay,
if you were that way inclined.
Just couldn't hack the attack.
I'm the kind of person who takes things personally, and I think with that kind of role, you have to be able to like switch off.
Yeah,
and how to switch off for that.
I'm too emotional for that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if somebody was like kicking off around me, I'd probably be upset.
I'd be so upset. Yes.
Yeah. So are those all your processes that you went through? You wanted money.
Yeah.
And the other thing was work-life balance.
Work-life balance, yeah.
Was there anything else?
Yeah, I would say also, to be fair, I'd say now what I look for, and if I was to consider another role, is culture as well. I went in very much at the deep end in my first ever role. But luckily, it wasn't a terrible experience in terms of the working culture there. And when I say culture, I mean, is it diverse? Will you feel awkward being the only Black woman in the room, even though I was a lot of the time? Tech and financial services, those are two very male-dominated industries, and white male-dominated industries specifically, which is fine. I knew that was going to be part and parcel of the industry that I was working in, but are they aware of the differences, and do they encourage you to, express yourself about it, or is it like a taboo topic that you don't really talk about? And I feel like you can get the sense of that quite earlier on in the job searching process, even like the interview process. And when you're scanning the website, you look at their diversity policies. Is it something very high level and cliche, or do they sound like they actually mean what they're talking about? So those kind of things. I would say that's another main one that I considered.
Were there any challenges that you faced when you were going through this process of transitioning into your new, new role altogether?
Yes, where to start? I think for me, the biggest one, and which is probably still here actually, is the whole imposter syndrome thing. I think for a lot of people that I started off, so I'm not sure if I mentioned, my first ever role out of uni was, my first ever role out of uni was a random contracting role in comms, which was, so I did that for like 5-6 months. But then my first tech role out of uni was a grad scheme. So I was in technology, digital risk advisory in the Big Four. So I was a consultant basically. And that was one of the steepest learning curves that I'd ever had to experience and go on. And luckily enough, there was a lot of support in terms of like resources and where to go to learn. But you were thrown in at the deep end. Like after the first 2 or 3 weeks of like training, you'd literally be working with clients. You'd literally be working with, and I was in financial services, so it's literally like big known names that you bank with, big known names that you get your insurance from. Those are the clients that I was working with, and I'd go in to their offices and I'd have to just pretend like I had a clue. I have to pretend, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what I'm saying even making sense?
Making sense.
So yeah, it was a lot of self-doubt, and I think especially like I said, with the whole being the only Black woman in the team kind of thing. Even the way I spoke was different to my peers and to my colleagues. So it's just a lot of, getting through the mental aspect of, oh my gosh, should I be here kind of thing. Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who is watching this and they're thinking, how do I get into tech? How do I transition into a role that's like yours, maybe they've researched and they found that they want to do something similar to you. What is the success? What are the attributes that will be in a successful person in your role?
Yeah, I think you just have to be a hands-on person. Like, you have to be a go-getter. I found that when I initially was applying for the roles, I was like, oh, this is kind of easy. Like, you see these big names and these big companies, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so intimidating. I wouldn't even know where to start. But once you've actually committed to doing it and just deciding, just literally start, just go for it. Like, the worst that could happen is that you have a bad interview or they tell you that you're not experienced. But at the end of the day, you've been there, you've learned what they're looking for. So the next time that you go, you'll go in with more knowledge and more confidence. So just be hands-on, be super practical, just do it, and take your career into your own hands in terms of, don't wait for someone to tell you, oh, this is the course that you need to do to get into tech. Just do a course. And I would say, play into your skill sets. I knew from day dot that I was not going to be good at coding. That wasn't the path that I was that I was naturally inclined to do based on my personality and my skills. So just spend a bit of time, introspect, and just learn what you actually like and what you're good at. Those can be very different, what you like and what you're good at. You can pick either one to follow. If you pick what you like, then that's obviously easier. But if you pick what you're good at, then you know you're in for a better chance of success. So yeah, do your research and also reach out to people. When I was looking for my first few roles, I would find somebody in the team who was a Black woman, ideally, if I could.
Yeah.
And just pop them a message, say, I've got this interview coming up. Is there any tips that you can give me? And I had so many good people who are willing to help.
Yeah.
Even me, people have done the same to me. They've reached out to me and I will say, let's get on a call. Like, I'm always open to helping. So I would say just reach out to people. They'd surprise you how willing they are to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's really it. I think that I realized when I started looking for mentors, when I start in a company, I scour for the friendly person.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, hi, can you just walk me through the ins and outs of the company? And like, what are the things that I'll need to have in mind to be successful in my role? So, and even before starting, like you say, if you can actually reach out to someone, 9 times out of 10, people are going to help you.
Yeah, they will.
So where do you see your industry kind of going within the next 5 to 10 years? Is there something that you would advise people to kind of be aware of?
That's a good question. I think where I'm at now is very interesting because although I work in financial services, I technically work for a startup. So it's one of the new competitor banks. So there's a lot of focus and almost encouragement of breaking out of the traditional bureaucracy and standard processes of banking. Like, banking has been around for how many years? It's very, very bureaucratic. It's very, very process driven, and it's almost taboo to shy away from the agreed processes that everyone's been doing forever. So I think with us, what we're doing now is trying to tap into using technology to our advantage rather than seeing it as a scary or risky thing. In terms of where controls testing is going, I think automation, of course. It's inevitable, automation. We're trialing some things now in terms of trying to automate testing. But I'd say one thing with that is, as much as we will probably embed that more into our working, you're always still going to need human input with a role like testing or auditing. It's always still going to have a human who has the final say. So you can use it as an aid, but I think we'll always still have, human interaction and involvement. Just trying to cost save in terms of time as well. A lot of the work that we do can be time consuming and manual in terms of like going through sheets and sheets of numbers or data or text or whatever. So we're using and trialing out AI. Cliche, but AI.
When is AI not going to come into the conversation? It's like in every conversation.
Yeah, but it's great. It's great. It's like, it's like Google on steroids.
Yeah.
So just using
those are the front end.
Exactly, to save time. So you can use your time and brain energy to be more creative and think of solutions rather than just doing manual, boring tasks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the best advice, career advice, you have received so far?
A good one. I can't remember who told me this actually, but maybe I heard it on a podcast. Someone said, everybody's faking it. Someone told me that everybody's faking it. So you see the seniors up there who are so confident, who seem so confident and seem like they know what they're talking about. They're faking it to some extent. I agree with that. I think you definitely can have your expertise in certain industries, in certain areas, and certain knowledge topics. But in terms of the confidence and the charisma, no one has that naturally. Everyone's putting their best foot forward and putting on, I wouldn't say a facade, but everyone's, it's not something that's just innately, natural to people. So have that in mind when you're feeling intimidated or you're feeling like, oh my gosh, everyone here is so clever. Everyone's just faking it. So you just do the same. You fake it till you make it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. I think I've had the same experience when I first started. The same thing that you mentioned, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You walk into rooms where it's just a bunch of, middle-aged white men. I remember I had an interview one time actually, and I walk in, it's just middle-aged white men, and I felt out of place already, first thing. And it felt very, I want to say hostile a bit, because after like a very heated interview, which now that I interview, I don't think that's how it should be. It should be a friendly chat.
Conversational.
Because if I've got the skills, you don't need to kind of put me under the third degree for you to know that I've got the skills.
Exactly.
It will show it like naturally. And I felt a bit put on the spot, and I was like, I was feeling quite uncomfortable already. Already nobody in the office looks like me. So I was a bit like, I don't even know if this is the right place for me. And then after I did the assessment, they then proceeded to be like, okay, asking me loads of questions like, okay, do you have a driving license? Do you have a valid passport? And also my family planning, they were like, are you going to have kids anytime soon?
Is that illegal to ask?
No, it's completely illegal. Asking me if I'm going to have kids soon. What I'm like, if I'll be able to work till super late or like that super early. And already I was seeing all these red flags, like you're saying. I was like, this is not a place I want to work. So I think also being able to be like, yes, I might not know everything, but I'm not going to compromise on where I'm going to work for the sake of just getting my foot through the door. Because if you're starting out and you don't know it all, give yourself grace and work in an environment where you're going to be able to grow. And even if you are in mid-level going up to senior, nobody should ever make you compromise on your ability to, have a work-life balance or learn in a nice environment. Because you don't want to be in a position where people are just
wait for you to fall.
Agreed. So in terms of someone coming into your industry, what would be the top advice for them?
I would say try and be confident in the fact that even though you don't know it all, you can learn. I feel like as long as you have a learning energy and a learning spirit and a willingness to learn, you'll be fine. Everything can be taught at the end of the day. No one's born with the knowledge of how to test a control. So as long as you're able to learn and as long as you're able to back yourself and really draw out and bring to attention the skills that you do have to your managers or whoever, you'll be fine. I think that's one thing I did have to learn because I'd say I'm an introverted person, and by nature, I'm not the kind of person to brag about what I did. And I'd find myself in meetings and everyone would be like, oh, what did everyone get up to this week? And people who did the most standard task would like do a 20-minute spiel on what they did. I was like, oh, okay, great. Ashe, what about you? And I'd just speak about it for a sentence, even though I did add a lot of value. So just being able to brag about yourself. You'll be fine as long as you can do those two things. Brag about yourself and be open to learning.
Is there anything you would do differently coming into this particular area of tech?
Good question. Differently. I don't think I'd do anything differently, I don't think I did everything perfectly, but where I did fall, learning curve. it was good learning. So for example, I was extremely not willing to, I wanted to work where I was comfortable. So in my second role, there were a few jobs for promotion for manager that came up, and people in my team were encouraging me to go for it. And I wasn't keen on doing that. I probably should have in hindsight, even though I may not have felt like I was ready. But someone else who joined before me did go for it and they got the job. So I was just like, oh, I should have done it. So it was a learning curve. So not that I would have gone back and done it, but just seeing someone literally overtake me in front of my own eyes, that was learning to say, okay, when the opportunity comes, grab it, even though you think you're not ready. Just take it anyway and try. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. So is there anything in particular that you'd say is your favorite thing about your current role?
I love learning the behind the scenes. Like I say, I work in financial services, I work in banking, and the bank that I work for, I use personally. So for me, it's so interesting to see and understand in depth all the processes that happen behind the scenes. So you just tap your card and you don't think too much about it, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So I really think that's really enjoyable. Yeah, speaking to people who are building all these apps and features for the bank, it's really interesting.
Before I wrap up, I want to know, like, what's the kind of like technologies that you use to assess these things behind the scenes if you're not super technical?
Good question. Like I said, a lot of it right now is quite manual. So literally it would be a spreadsheet of data. I'll do maybe an Excel formula and to find out what I'm looking for, or reviewing like Slack. We work on Slack. So Slack alerts, for example, just having a look at when they fired. There's a few like dashboards, interactive dashboards that we use as well. So we search and troll through different types of data there. So I'd say there's a lot of data analysis actually involved in this role. So yeah, those are technologies we use. They're more like internal technologies, and it's just finding a way to extract the information that you need out of the different, database sources. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add that might be useful for someone who wants to either get into it or wants to progress to a senior position?
I would say keep your options open. I think once you get your foot in the door in tech, don't say no to something that's a bit different to what you're already doing. I think keep your options open. My current role now is slightly different from my previous role. Different lines of defense. Don't want to get into that. Different lines of defense, but I was like, why not? It's kind of similar. Keep your eye out for like transferable skills. So if you see that you're doing one thing well here and you see a role that's not quite the same, just think about what skills that you can bring to that role as well. So yeah, keep your options open. Like tech is very, very broad, so don't put yourself into a box. Unless you want to be an SME, then yeah, stay in that box. But generally, I would say keep your options open.
Do you see yourself staying in this industry for a little while longer, or would you cross-skill to another area?
Good question. I've been pondering about this a lot. I'm undecided, and that's on purpose. Like I say, I want to spend a year or two not thinking about my next step, just because it's been back to back since graduation. So I'm just coasting for now. Yeah. When I get bored, then I'll start thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that was helpful for you guys. I think I'm going to wrap up. And we're going to share your LinkedIn as well. Yes. People to collaborate with you.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed that. So thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.